Finally, your house is mine. You never deserved it. My sister Aurora's voice sliced through the heavy silence of the courtroom, smug and dripping with entitlement. She stood up, caressing her baby bump as if it were a shield, her eyes locking onto mine with pure, unadulterated triumph. Beside her, my parents, Lawrence and Cynthia, were softly applauding, their faces twisted into expressions of disdain that I knew all too well. I did not move. I did not speak. I just stood there watching them celebrate a victory they had not earned. Then the judge looked up from the documents in front of him. His eyes narrowed behind his glasses as he dropped the bombshell that would shatter their entire reality. One of the 12 properties, I see. I would love to take a look at the rest. The smile died on Aurora's face instantly. Before I tell you how my own family tried to frame me to steal my empire, drop a comment telling me, have you ever been underestimated by the people who were supposed to love you? To understand the sheer, unadulterated terror on my mother's face in that courtroom, you have to go back 3 years. My name is Amelia, I am 29 years old, and for most of my life, I was nothing more than a blurred background character in the dazzling movie of my sister's life. They called me the quiet one. The plain one. The failure. But silence isn't empty. It is full of answers. The memory that kept me warm while I watched them panic happened at Aurora's wedding. It was a lavish, six-figure affair held at one of the city's most exclusive hotels. I was not the maid of honor. I was not even a bridesmaid. I was the unpaid logistics coordinator. While Aurora was sipping champagne in the bridal suite, I was hauling 50-pound boxes of floral arrangements up the service elevator because they did not want to pay the venue setup fee. I was sweating in my off-the-rack dress, invisible to the staff, invisible to the guests. I remember walking past Julian, my brother-in-law, as he adjusted his tuxedo. He did not offer to help. He just looked me up and down with a sneer that curled his lip. Look at you working up a sweat, he laughed, loud enough for his groomsmen to hear. Try not to stand too close to the guests, Amelia. We do not want you ruining the aesthetic. I did not say a word. I just kept walking. But the moment that truly sealed their fate happened at the reception. After 5 hours of manual labor, I was exhausted and starving. I found an empty chair at a table near the back, just looking for a moment to rest my feet and eat a roll. Before I could even sit, my mother, Cynthia, materialized out of nowhere. Her hand clamped onto my shoulder, her nails digging into my skin through the fabric. Oh honey, no, she whispered, her voice dripping with that fake sweetness she reserved for public humiliation. This table is for VIPs. We need this space for people who actually contributed to the registry. Why don't you grab a plate and go eat in the kitchen? It is less crowded and you won't be in the photographer's way. I looked at her. I looked at the table full of strangers who were watching me being dismissed like a servant. The hunger in my stomach turned into something cold and hard. This was not an accident. This was the trap of normalized cruelty. They needed me to be small so Aurora could feel big. They needed me to be the failure so they could feel successful. If I had worth, their entire family hierarchy would collapse. I walked to the kitchen. I stood over a stainless steel counter, eating a cold roll while the sounds of laughter and music drifted through the swinging doors. They thought they had broken me. They thought I was back there crying over my exclusion. But I was not crying. I was checking my phone. A notification had just popped up on my screen from my broker. The closing documents for the commercial building across the street, the one housing the boutique where Aurora bought her wedding dress, had just been finalized. While they were eating dinner paid for with credit cards, I was quietly buying the city they lived in. I swallowed that cold roll and I smiled. They did not know it yet, but the kitchen staff owned the venue. To understand why I did not hesitate to ruin them, you have to see what I saw 2 months ago. It was a Tuesday. I had driven up to my property in Lake Tahoe, a glass-walled sanctuary perched on a ridge overlooking the water. It was the one place where I felt human. It was the one place they did not know about, or so I thought. When I pulled into the driveway, the first thing I noticed was not the view. It was the unfamiliar SUV parked aggressively close to the front entrance. My stomach did not drop. It tightened. I walked up the stone path, my keys ready in my hand. But when I slid my key into the lock, it did not turn. I looked closer. The metal around the cylinder was jagged and raw. Fresh shavings glinted on the welcome mat. They had not just picked the lock, they had drilled it out. I pushed the door open. The silence of my retreat had been replaced by the blaring noise of a television. I walked into the living room and for a second I did not recognize my own home. My vintage leather armchairs were gone. My minimalist coffee table was gone. In their place stood a mountain of unopened boxes, a pastel-colored crib and a changing table piled high with diapers. Aurora was lying on a new garish sectional sofa, eating strawberries out of a bowl I recognized from my kitchen. Julian was mounting a 60-inch TV on the wall, drilling holes directly into the custom Venetian plaster I had imported from Italy. Aurora looked up not with fear but with annoyance. "Oh, you're here," she said, popping a strawberry into her mouth. "We were going to call you but we have been so busy nesting. We figured you would not mind. You're hardly ever here anyway." I did not answer. I walked past her straight to the floor-to-ceiling glass doors that led to the deck. They were wide open, letting the freezing mountain air blast into the house. I stepped outside. And that is when I saw it. Piled in the corner of the deck, half covered in a drift of fresh snow, were my things. My books. My clothes. And sitting right on top, bloated with moisture and ruined by the elements, were my grandmother's journals. The leather was warped, the pages turned to pulp. Decades of family history, the only inheritance I actually cared about, destroyed because they needed space for a diaper genie. I stood there looking at the ruin of the only thing I loved. The cold wind bit at my face, but I did not feel it. I felt a switch flip inside my brain. It was the click of a safety being disabled. Amelia, stop being dramatic, Aurora called out from the warmth of the living room. She had not even gotten up. Look, you are a 29-year-old spinster. What do you need a 5-bedroom house for? To hoard cats? I'm having a baby. We need this space. We are doing you a favor, really. Giving this place a purpose. She smiled that sickly sweet smile, rubbing her stomach as if her pregnancy was a diplomatic immunity pass for felony breaking and entering. She thought she was negotiating with her pushover sister. She thought this was a family dispute. I turned back to face them. I did not scream. I did not ask them to leave. I did not ask why. I simply pulled my phone from my pocket. Who are you calling? Julian asked, the drill still in his hand. Go ahead. He agrees with us. I did not call Mom. I tapped 3 digits. 911. Address, 440 Ridgeline Road, I said, my voice flat and devoid of any tremble. I have intruders in my home. They have damaged the property and are refusing to leave. Yes, I am the sole owner. Send officers immediately. Julian dropped the drill. It hit the floor with a heavy thud, cracking the tile. It was the sound of their world beginning to fracture. The police arrived in 6 minutes. I did not have to fill out a report. I did not have to explain the intricacies of property law. I simply handed the officer the deed on my phone, pointed to the shattered lock and stepped back. Watching Aurora being escorted off the property should have been satisfying. Instead, it was pathetic. She played the victim with Oscar-worthy dedication, sobbing loudly about her blood pressure and the stress I was putting on her unborn child. Julian followed her, carrying the flat-screen TV he had not finished mounting, looking like a sullen teenager who had been grounded. But the real show had not started yet. Just as the officer was writing the citation for criminal trespass, a black sedan screeched into the driveway, tires kicking up gravel. My father, Lawrence, slammed the car door shut. He did not run to Aurora to see if she was okay. He stormed straight toward me, his face a mask of purple rage. I expected him to yell about the police. I expected him to scream about family loyalty. I did not expect him to smile. It was a tight, grimacing smile that did not reach his eyes. You think you are smart, do you not? He spat, ignoring the police officer standing 10 feet away. You think a piece of paper makes this yours? It is mine, Lawrence, I said, refusing to call him Dad. I bought it. I paid for it. And I am the one pressing charges. He laughed. It was a dry, barking sound. You paid for it. With what money, Amelia? The money you made flipping those first few apartments 8 years ago? I frowned. He never talked about my business. He usually pretended it did not exist. Yes, I said. And where did you get the seed money for those investments? He stepped closer, invading my personal space. The officer took a step forward, hand on his belt, but Lawrence ignored him. You did not have a job. You were a nobody. You got that money from me. I stared at him. He was rewriting history in real time. You never gave me a dime, I said, my voice dropping an octave. You told me I was on my own the day I turned 18. That is not how I remember it, he said, his voice loud enough for the neighbors down the ridge to hear. And that is not how the court will see it. We filed the paperwork this morning, Amelia. We are suing you for constructive trust. I blinked. Constructive trust. It was a specific legal term. It meant he was claiming that he had transferred property or money to me in good faith, to hold on his behalf, and that I was now unjustly enriching myself by keeping it. That $500,000 I gave you 8 years ago? He continued, lying with such conviction that for a second, I almost questioned my own memory. That was not a gift. It was an investment. You were just the nominee. You were holding it for the family. No. We want our assets back. Including this house. He was not just trying to steal the lake house. He was trying to steal the origin story of my entire life. He was claiming that my sweat, my sleepless nights, my risks, and my victories were actually his. He was trying to turn me from a self-made woman into an embezzler. Aurora stopped crying by the police cruiser. She looked at me, a smirk cutting through her tears. Ideally, we will settle, she called out. Just sign over the deed and we will drop the lawsuit. We might even let you visit the baby. I looked at them. The father who claimed my success was his. The sister who believed she was entitled to the fruit of my labor. The brother-in-law who was already calculating the resale value of my furniture. They were so confident. They truly believed that because I had been silent all these years I was weak. I looked at Lawrence. "You're under oath?" I asked quietly. "You are willing to swear in a court of law that you gave me $500,000 in cash 8 years ago?" "Absolutely," he sneered. "I have the withdrawal slips to prove I had the money." "You are finished, Amelia." I did not argue. I did not scream that he was a liar. I simply nodded. "See you in court," I said. The next morning I sat in a conference room that cost more per hour than my father made in a month. My attorney, a man whose silence was more terrifying than most people's shouting, slid a thick binder across the mahogany table. "We have a problem, Amelia," he said, tapping the lawsuit my father had filed. "They aren't just coming for the lake house. They are petitioning for a forensic audit of your entire financial history. They claim that the $500,000 your father invested with you 8 years ago has appreciated, and they are entitled to a percentage of all your holdings." He looked concerned. He thought I was a successful woman about to lose her nest egg. He did not know he was sitting across from a titan. I opened the binder. It contained the real deeds. The ones my family had never seen. The ones hidden behind a fortress of blind LLCs, shell companies, and anonymous trusts. My name appeared nowhere on public records, but the ink in that binder proved the truth. I did not just own a few apartments. I owned the city block where Aurora got her hair done. I owned the warehouse district where Julian's failing crypto startup rented office space. I owned the debt on my parents' country club. My portfolio was not $5 million. It was $150 million. "Let them audit me," I said, leaning back. "Amelia, listen to me," he pressed. "If they can convince a judge that the seed money was theirs, they could tie up your assets for years. We need to prove that the initial investment was yours. We need to show your pay stubs from those 3 jobs you worked. We need to show the bank loans." I shook my head. "No." He frowned. No, I said calmly. "I don't want to prove the money was mine. I want them to prove it was theirs." My lawyer hesitated. "But that supports their claim." "Exactly. Lawrence says he gave me $500,000 in cash 8 years ago. Unreported, untaxed, under the table." He went still. Then the realization hit him. "If he swears that money was his," he whispered. "Then he isn't just suing me," I said. "He's confessing to federal tax evasion and money laundering." My lawyer closed the file, smiling faintly. "You don't want to win the lawsuit. You want to incriminate them. Correct? Let them lie as loudly as they want." On the morning of trial they were celebrating early texts, Facebook posts, smug confidence. I put on my suit. It wasn't clothing. It was armor. In court, Lawrence played the grieving father, claiming the cash was his life savings, kept it home to avoid banks, given to me in trust. Aurora nodded tearfully, smirking at me when the judge looked away. I stayed still. Let them talk. Every detail tightened the noose. My attorney stood. "Come, Bort. You gave my client $500,000 in cash?" "Yes." "Every penny. Did you declare this money as income?" Lawrence shouted that it didn't matter, that it was his and I stole it. My attorney turned to the judge. "Let the record show the plaintiff has admitted under oath to $500,000 in unreported income." The color drained from Lawrence's face. "You have not just sued your daughter," my attorney said. "You have confessed to federal tax evasion and money laundering." Then Aurora screamed, clutching her stomach, collapsing into hysterics. Chaos. Accusations. Sympathy swung toward them. I didn't move. I took out my phone. "Your Honor," I said, "I'd like to submit evidence recorded 20 minutes ago." The video played. Aurora in the lobby, calm, bored. "If the judge sides with Amelia, I'll fake a cramp," she said. "She's weak. She'll fold." Silence crushed the room. The judge looked at Aurora with pure disgust. "Take Mr. Lawrence and Miss Cynthia into custody. Refer Ms. Aurora for perjury and contempt." As the cuffs closed, I looked at Julian. "That penthouse you're renting? I bought the building this morning." "You're evicted." 2 weeks later, I stood alone at my Lake Tahoe home, holding a check from the U.S. Treasury, my whistleblower award. They tried to make me their retirement plan. Instead, their greed paid me. They wanted to destroy me. I let them destroy themselves.